5% what he has. I don't help, just like, I think you can say I'm expert. Mhm.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Harvard and our lecture series. For the last 1.5 years, we have been trying to make a journey on a series called Indian Languages and Literature. We started 2006 December with Sanskrit. We moved to Hindi, Urdu, Gujarati, Nepali, and then we broke for the summer, and again we started this year with Marathi, Bengali, Punjabi, and last month, Kashmiri. So we are in our 10th lecture today. You will see we call it different parts by Harvard standard as a semester. So we have 4-part series, each consisting of 3 to 4 lectures. So this is the first lecture of the 4th part. Now Sindhi. Sindhi is not only an interesting language, it's the language of an interesting people. India was known to the world when it was a colony by the Indus Valley. Indus Valley put the India's name among the civilizations of the world. Presently, however, there's been a lot of debate about what Indus Valley was, who the people were, what did they do, and most of all, did they write? Even though we have a lot of artifacts from the place, people have not been able to decipher them well. There are 2 schools. One school thinks that they're only symbols. Other school from India think they can read. Why this is important? It's important because the people who lived in Indus Valley should be the original Indians who became later on Vedic Indians, or what we call modern Indians. But that connection can't be done well. So there we come to the land of Sindh, the land of Sindhu, as Dr. Dudani will say, and Sindhu becoming Indus River, and Indus becoming India, and I occasionally being identified as a Hindu. All this has this origin in this little land called Sindhu. So we are thankful that we have a Sindhi scholar with us, a local person, a patriot of India, a patriot of the United States, who has been practicing medicine and has been active in literature and languages for all his life. Sindhi people are very interesting, I said in the beginning. That is, they're enterprising. Sindhi people from Indus Valley, they were from Babylon to Caspian, they had a whole spread of trade route. So the language itself had developed probably with huge influence from various cultures. Later on, when Islamic people came, that culture was further influenced by Arabic, Persian, and Turkish influences. So now what we are going to see is the history of these people through its language. And I learned they have an alphabet now, which has been developed about 100 years ago, or 19th century. So we have a celebration of this language, culture, and people. Interestingly again, Sindhis, as we know, are spread all over the world. And Dr. Dudani just told me that he was born in Sindh and migrated to India. And many of you probably had the similar kind of history. So with celebration of the Sindhi people who have maintained their tradition and language and literature over the time, and who have given the genesis of Indian civilization, we celebrate today the Sindhi language and literature. And as I said before, we are so fortunate to have Dr. Dudani with us, whom I know for many, many years, about 20 plus years, as a friend, as a mentor, as an athlete, as a poet. And we have many of you who are here who also have celebrated Sindhi in the past. In the format of our lecture is, we will, Dr. Dudani has a good friend, Mr. Parwani, a young man who is helping him in the lecture. And we have a lecture format. After the lecture, there'll be short recitations about the portions of the literature, how the language is heard. And then we will open it for questions. So please use this forum informal, learn it. If you can contribute, do add wherever you think you have more knowledge or you think you have a comment, please don't hesitate. Treat it as an educational forum so we all learn from it. These lectures are done on behalf of the Department of Sanskrit and Indian Studies, where we try to educate ourselves about the research that we might undertake in future years. So in that, you are a part, and I thank you for coming today. The next month, we will go to Vedic literature, and I will mention about that once we finish this lecture today. So let us now welcome to Dr. Dudani. Dr. Dudani's wife is here somewhere, and Prakash Parwani, the family Dudanis and Parwani, for the lecture. Thank you all for coming. Dr. Dudani.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for that introduction. Today's lecture, I shall divide into following sections. It will be introduction, then I'll touch the ancient times, turbulent history of Sindh, and the structure of Sindhi language, then the Sindhi Sufism, followed by Sindhi as a state language from 1852, then post-independence Sindhi language and the literature, and finally the recitation of the alphabet and little bit of Sindhi music, if you have the time. In Sindhi, welcome, Bhali Kare Aaya. The presentation is by myself and Prakash Parwani. On behalf of both of us and Sindhi community, my thanks to Harvard University, Department of Sanskrit and Indian Languages, and Dr. Vijay Mishra, Professor Gopinath, for giving Sindhi this opportunity. For us here, it is in the same vein when in 1967, Sindhis in India thanked the people and the government of India for including Sindhi as one of the national languages of India. We would appreciate if the queries, comments, and questions are reserved to the end of the presentation. We would not want to break the continuity of our thoughts. Sindhi was spoken by about 25 million in Sindh, out of which about 3 million were in India and about 500,000 scattered all over the world. In ancient times, early in 1920s, excavation at Mohenjo-daro near Larkana which is also my birthplace, revealed a large metropolis with all brick structures, well-led city, a textile and other manufacturing center, trading with many overseas and overland regions. Even then, major portion still remains to be excavated with undeciphered script after 60 years plus of independence. It's a tragedy. There were 3 cities rebuilt on top of the ruins of the previous cities, all at the same spot, thus estimated to have lasted more than 800 years at the same spot. Many artifacts reveal relationship to the existing society, and I'm sure to the existing Sindhi language. The deciphering may be easier if the experts concentrate on the Sindhi language also, which to my knowledge they have not done fully yet. This was followed by Rig Veda, which sings the glory of Sindhu River as a mighty male deity, as a vast sea, as a powerful river with very prosperous hinterland and all along its banks. It's a literal admiration for the nature and human development in Rig Veda. Sanskrit is a refined, as a literary language, must have had a form that common people used in those times. What was that? That's for the research people to find out. Later on, we come to Puranic area. The region gets noted when Shiva carried the corpse of his wife Sati. The sindoor or the vermilion from her head fell at Hinglaj, and Hinglaj is west of present Karachi in Sindh. Here, an ancient temple of Hinglaj still exists, though in a dilapidated condition. Later on, Ramayana mentions the region of Sindhu, and in Mahabharata, the Jayadratha as prince of Sindhu Desh, at the behest of his wife Dushala. Her brother Duryodhan had dispatched 30,000 Brahmins in those days to Sindh. In those days, it was also called Papapurna Pradesh. That is probably fond of music, fun, and everything else. Maybe because Jayadratha had sided with Duryodhan and was killed, Sindh fell into neglect and disrepute. After that, we find that the Old Testament mentions in the book of Esther that the region was annexed by Achaemenian Empire under King Darius and was called Hudu and Hindiki. In Hebrew, that means fragrance. So the prosperity of region was even known in those days. Alexander defeated the Persians, and after confrontation with King Poro, devastated Sindh, massacring all the teachers, Brahmins, and destroying arts, literature, and everything he could get hold of, because the king had not accepted his advice or surrendered to him. Later in Vikram area of the Ujjain rulers annexed southeast portion of Sindh, sending again teachers, Brahmin, to the region in the 1st century BC. It was in 500 AD or so that Sindh was brought back in the fold by Sahasi Rajput rulers from Arabian Sea to Kashmir, the united Sindh. In early 8th century, the holy Jain scriptures speak of Sindhi as an elegant, with a lovely, soft, and slow gait. It says people are fond of songs, music, dance, and feel affection for their country. So this checkered history was followed by turbulent times, and the tiding of history left Sindh in turmoil for centuries. The year 711 AD was fateful when the Arabs finally conquered Sindh, and after innumerable attempts in previous decades. They eliminated most of the upper classes, destroying the temples, the arts, culture, and literary institution. And for next 150 years, they left Sindh in chaos with no central authority, as they did in other places from Baghdad. The Arab generals who were left behind, the preachers and their lackeys with no ruled different parts of Sindh in their own chaotic way. The legend of the reincarnation of Varuna, the ocean form of Lord Vishnu, was born in the early 10th century as Uderolal Jhulelal, worshipped by Hindus to this day. He inspired Hindus to stand up, fight an overwhelmed oppressive Muslim ruler to the relief of all common people, both Hindus and Muslims combined. Sindhis regained their self-confidence. Hindu traders who had ships sailing to the Gulf and whole of coastal India prospered, and later day Shah Latif eulogized their courage and the longing of women left behind in his Sur Samundi compositions. The scholars generally agree that mid-10th century was the time when Sindhi assumed its modern form. It was towards the end of the century that Rajput princes converted to Islam, consolidated Sindh under their rule, ushering in not only political consolidation, economic prosperity, but great renaissance of Sindhi language. The popular folklore of romantic tales are related to that period. They were all immortalized later in the poetry of Shah Abdul Latif. The blossoming of Sindhi continued for another 250 years or so with no written records, however. And that you will understand from what followed with history's tribulation for Sindh. The reasons for absence of any written literature are obvious. The history has been replete with invasions and occupation of Sindh by Shakas, Kushans, Sassanians, Huns, Walker wanderings, Scythians, Gurjars, and so on. Barring the last few tribes who merged with the local population and settled in Sindh, others were brutal, destroying whatever existed in the form of institutions, art, and literature. They were followed by Afghans, Arghuns, Tarakhans, who did the same, and finally Mughals under Akbar. Sindh once again was consolidated, at least a governing region. But in 1737, Nader Shah dealt deathly blow to the Mughal Empire, looting the whole region of northwest. From Sindh and adjoining regions, he took away the dancers, the musician tribes that came to be called Gypsy in Europe, designated by UNICEF now as of Indian origin. Thus, it was no wonder that there were no written records of Sindhi literature. Following the devastation, Sindh came to be ruled by indigenous Muslim rulers, but they made Farsi as their state language. They frowned on Sindhi language and writers and composers. Strangely, these rulers would not trust Muslim scholars in Farsi. Instead, they brought in Hindu traders who were experts in Farsi. These Sindhi traders from Upper Sindh and Multan region had established extensive trade and financial institutions in Central Asia from 12th century until the advent of British, stretching from China to Rome. Recent publications from Russian archives have revealed that part of history. These Sindhi Hindu traders ran the treasury and administration for the Muslim rulers who gave them the title of Amils. They became a privileged class of Hindus and contributed very greatly to advancement of Sindhi literature. Sindhi flowered among common people, poets who were mostly Muslim in those days, but initiated and followed the tenets of Bhaktivad or monotheistic devotional composition in their poems, even in early 15th century. Recently, Dr. Motilal Jotwani, who came to Harvard also for a year's attachment, he has unearthed some of those manuscripts from Agra and other places. Their poetry, like that of others who came later, expresses the craving of a female for male supreme being and was based on classical source of Hindustani music. The structure of Sindhi language. The British developed interest in Sindh and Sindhi language prior to their conquest of Sindh in 1843. They spurred the study of Sindhi by missionaries, military, and civil service personnel. Richard Byrd, Ernest Trump, George Scott, and others were the Orientalists. They all agreed that Sindhi belonged to the family of Sanskrit and Prakrit languages. Trump, a Lutheran missionary from Germany, later published Sindhi grammar, concluding that Sindhi was much closer to Prakrit than Marathi, Hindi, or Bengali, and had preserved abundance of grammatical structure that its subtlety of execution and inner strength by far surpasses the loose construction of other languages. The rules which grammatician Kramadeshwar laid down for Abhramsha can be clearly recognized in Sindhi language of today, he said. In 1851, Richard Burton in his book stated, "It may safely be asserted that no vernacular dialect in India at that time of our taking the country possessed more and few so much original composition. It is this inner strength and solid grammatical structure that has preserved Sindhi language through the millennia of vicious occupation and destruction of its civilization, arts, and culture." The closeness of Sindhi to Sanskrit has been explored and acknowledged by many Indian scholars since independence. Mr. Kadappan was also a member of the parliament in 1966, and while speaking on the bill for inclusion of Sindhi as a national language, he said, "Sindhi is one of the most ancient language. As a student of languages, its origin was even before Sanskrit in this country." Later on, Suniti Kumar Chatterjee stated, "The Sindhi was the product of Indo-Aryan language or Prakrit of Middle Ages. Sindhi has preserved the signs of all the stages of Old Indo-Aryan, Mid-Indo-Aryan, and Neo-Indo-Aryan languages." These are quotations of Trump, and others are from Professor Anne-Marie Schmel, Dr. Popati Hiranandani, and Dr. Motilal Jotwani, I'm sorry. I'll give few examples. In Sanskrit, the word is anas. In Sindhi, it is anaso, anas, anasi, which is same, and it is a kind, in Sanskrit it was a contemptuous for a non-Aryan person, whereas in Sindhi it is used in a way contemptuously also for lazy, crude, or thick-skinned person. Milk, the word milk in Sindhi is kheer, and so it is in pre-Vedic Sanskrit. Whereas in other Indian languages, kheer becomes a sweet dish made from milk. In Sindhi, for rain we say mi, Vedic is meh, classical Sanskrit is meg. In Sindhi, old is jur, in Vedic is jure, in classical Sanskrit is jiran. Kishan Jetli translated one couplet from Shah Latif into Sanskrit. In Sindhi, it is Vagar kayo vatan prit nachinan paname pasu pakhiyadan manhua met gano. He says that birds and the animals flock together and they have more sweetness among themselves. They stick together compared to human beings. In Sanskrit, as Jetli wrote, Vagar kirtava bartante pritara nachindant atamsu pashe pakshana manave bhayo mishthan ganam. excuse my pronunciation. Now, there's certain special characteristics of Sindhi which Trump and others have pointed out. Trump says the Sindhi has pronominal suffixes which occur in verbs having concurred together either with the subject or the recipient. And Trump further says the use of suffixes constitutes quite a special, peculiar feature of the Sindhi language and distinguished it advantageously from the kindred idiom of Indian languages which are destitute of pronominal suffixes. Because of the suffixes, a single word gives us the meaning of a whole sentence in Sindhi. And these words are like kerayais, utharyais, sumharyais, maryais, chichlais, which tell that this was all done to a person and left behind. So the whole sentence comes in one word. George Scott observed, I was hitherto proud of the English language, as I consider more beautiful and very copious language in the world. But it was very vain of me. When I learned Sindhi, I found reduplicated causal verb and other points that gave to Sindhi beauties distinct from most Indian languages. Sindhi uses both tatsam, which is without phonetic modification, and tadbhav, which is borrowed from Sanskrit and Arabic and Farsi languages, like attar, itur. Both words are accepted. Mutak, mukut. Sindhi also has a vocal finals. When we write in Hindi, Ram, in Sindhi we write as Ram, Gopal, Gopalu. And also Sindhi has 4 implosive words. Not words, the alphabet is 4 implosive. All these 4 are present in Sindhi languages, whereas in other Indian languages, it is only 1 or 2. These are, when we deal with the alphabet, we should describe more, but I'll pronounce them. These are B, D, G, G. All 4 are present in Sindhi language. From there, we'll take you through the sections of Sindhi Sufism. Why we call it Sindhi Sufism? Because Sindhi poets, largely Muslims, who combined the classical Islamic Sufism with Vedanta and the whole new category of called Sindhi Sufism arises. It combines the Advait Vedanta with the Wahdat al-Wujud philosophy of Sufism. The devotional poetry in Sindhi has been known since early 15th century at least. However, from mid-18th to mid-19th century, so much and so rich, such a rich compositions were created, blending Vedantic thoughts with Sufism, that Sindhi Sufism was born. Shah Latif, the principal poets of this at that time, who roamed the subcontinent for more than 3 years, in company of sannyasis, yogis, bairagis, brought together the essence of Islam with that of Gita. He utilized the romantic folk tales of Sindh to compose enchanting poetry of a craving for a supreme being by a devotee in a female form. A poet becomes a female form. And hence, he based most of his poetry on classical Hindustani music. And he was known as an unflinching symbol of simplicity. I feel whatever I could collect, that following shlok from Gita expresses the characteristics of a devotee. Devotee who expresses belief in monotheistic devotion. It is from chapter 12, shlok 13 and 14. Adveshta sarva bhutana maitra karuna eva cha Nirmamoha nirankara sama dukha sukha kishami santushteha satatam yogi yatatma dharra nishchaya maya arpita mano buddhirayo madabhakta samay priyaha.
Was it? I missed it after that.
Okay, let me. It is that it's a person is selfless, person has no bias against others, person is friendly and compassionate to everybody, and so such a person who is steady in the happiness or sorrow, and he is without any egoistic or attachment, and he always remains calm, and such a person is very dear to me. Krishna says to Arjuna. So I think that expresses the character of any devotee or any poet who is devoted to monotheism and the devotion, and he becomes a devotee of Supreme Being. The Rasalo, or the compilation of the work of Shah Abdul Latif, which was initially done by Dr. Trump and later improved upon, and more was collected by Dr. Gurbakshani in the early 20th century, and also then Dr. Kalyan Advani later in the 1970s. Shah Abdul Latif starts his Rasalo with a quotation, with his couplet, which is, to my mind, it is a translation from the first chapter of Quran Sharif, and in other subsequent compositions in the same Sur Kalyan and Yaman Kalyan, he borrows from Gita. So I'll recite both of them. First will be the first one, as Shah Abdul Latif says. I'll recite it, and he will give you a gist of it in English. Avali Allahu Alim Alam Jo Dhani Qadir Pahje Kudrat Si Qaim Ahe Qadim Wali Wahid Wahdahu Raziko Rabb Rahim So Sara Hai Sacho Dhani Chave Hamdo Hakim Kare Pan Kareem Jodyun Jod Jahan Ji.
In name of Supreme Being, Lord of the universe, nature's creator since eternity.
From what I feel is other stanzas, which I'll recite 2-3 stanzas at a time, and he'll give a gist of it in English. These are from chapter 7, Shalok 6, 8, 9, 26 of Gita, and also chapter 2, Shalok 28, and chapter 10, Shalok 8. But I'll recite this only in Sindhi. Panhai Jallu Jalal, Panhai Jan Jamal, Panhai Jallu Jalal, Panhai Jan Jamal, Panhai Surat Piriya Ji, Panhai Surat Piriya Ji, Panhai Husn Kamal, Panhai Pir Murid Thiye, Panhai Pir Murid Thiye, Panhai Pan Khayal, Sab Sabhoi Hal, Manjai Malum Thiye, Sab Sabhoi Hal.
He was water, the fire, the glory of life, the beauty, beloved all, joys from him.
Panhai pase panakhe, Panhai pase panakhe, Panhai ya mahboob, Panhai khalke khu, पाणई तालिब तिन जो अल्लाह अल्लाह पाणई तालिब तिन जो सो ही सो हू सो अजल सो अल्लाह सो पिरी सो पसाव सो वेरी सो वाहरू पढ़ाडो सो सड अल्लाह पढ़ाडो सो सड वरवाईअ जो जे लहीं हुआ गहीं गॾु ॿुधण में बथिया
Destroyer, creator, enemy, and helper, beloved, echo, and sound, all one.
Following him and was Sachal Sarmast, another, the trio was called Shah Latif, Sachal and Sami. And the trio, Shah Latif from mid 18th century to early 19th century, and Sachal and Sami both lived close to 100 years, and they were young in 20s when Shah Latif was there, but they had a contact with each other. And compared to Shah Latif, who was, as I said, was known as the simplicity reincarnated, Sachal Sarmast was a defiant poet, and he was in a kind of a revolutionary too. He was defiant because he equated truth to supreme being and proclaimed an-al-haq, that I am the truth myself. And the common greetings which the followers of Sachal even follow today, they will say, Haq mawjood, Sada mawjood will be the response, which means the truth is prevailing and truth will always prevail. Sachal equated all the prophets and devotees together. I'll recite one of his such poems, composition, and also later on he says, people may say I am this person, I am that person, but I am what I am him, I am the real name. I am the real supreme myself. So there's no difference between supreme being and me. So one of his composition was Sachu Sai Hikro Konhe Shak Guman. Sachu Sai Hikro Konhe Shak Guman. Kathai Padhe Pothyu ta Kathai Padhe Quran. Kathe Isa, Kathe Ahmad ta Kathai Hanuman. Hairat Manj Hairan Vidhai Panjo Panakhe. Elsewhere he says, Nanak Lakshman Mera Naam, or which Madine Hu Furqan.
Only one Lord, no doubt or question, as Christ, Prophet, or Hanuman.
Then in another composition he says, I'll recite for you. Ko kiya chave aao, joi aaya soi aaya. Kiya chave aao, joi aaya soi aaya. Momin chave ko, kafir chave ko, la 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 la. Zahid nalo zahir chave ko, shair chave ko, sahir chave aao, joi aaya soi aaya.
Some say this, some that, I am what I am. Some say Muslim, some infidel, I am truth.
After that, Sami, who also, as I said, lived for close to 100 years, both Sachal and Sami passed away just before the British conquered Sindh. Sami was, in that same way, he was known as an incarnation of calmness and placidity. In his composition, he more or less translated the deep philosophy of Vedas and Upanishads into simple Sindhi language. He seldom used the analogy of folklore or any any such thing which was very heavily used by Shah Latif. But as I said, it is a simple explanation of Vedantic philosophy, and later on he combined that with his Sufism also. Two of his composition. One is, in simple words, he goes to his guru and he asks, how did this world come about? And the answer he gives is that guru, the Supreme Being, just turned on himself. So I'll recite that. Sansohi kupyo achi muhje jiya me Sami chave he Satguru kathau jagat thiyo Puthi dei pan khe sakhiya siddh kayo Are konhe koi biyo Jal papoto jal re.
I had doubts and asked how it all came. He turned around and revealed like a bubble in water.
And another, he conveys that all the scriptures, Veda Purana Quran Kav Sabha me soi soot Samjhi dis sami chave laye man mazboo जियां आकाश घटन में तियां सभ में साखी भूत को आत्मरत अवधू समझे हिन सुखन के. He says that where the Quran and Quran, they have the same thing, but in the last line he brings on the conception of a Holy Ghost, Sakhi Bhoot, saying that like there is a sky behind all the clouds, that's how the Holy Ghost is behind every living being. So at that time the Christianity had already come, so he brings that also. But as I said, he explains everything in a simple language without the other romanticism which is there in other poets. Then we come to the contemporary Sindhi. In 1852, modified Sindhi Arabic script, initiated by the British, was accepted by intellectuals of both communities, and Sindhi became the official language of the region also. Voluminous literature of all categories, both original and translated from English and other languages, was produced, and secular in structure for next 50 years. The beginning of 20th century was the rise of nationalist movement and of revival of religious Muslim consciousness. In 1860, Trump compiled the Shah Latif's Rasalo for the first time, later modified by Dr. Gurbakhshani, and as I said earlier. And there was another prolific writer, Mirza Khalej Beg, who was of Central Asian origin but born in Sindh, and he wrote fiction, non-fiction, poetry, and anything one could think of. And one of he also wanted to popularize the vegetables in the Sindhi diet, which were not seldom used. So I remember one line of his poems was about tomatoes. He says, "Vah tamata suhna yaar police jehda patka paye bhajin ke to rang lagaye." And during this period in early 20th century, Sindhi Hindus continued secular poetry with patriotic and social realism themes. There were a very large number of writers, generally secular, some religious, among both Muslims and Hindus. They excelled in fiction, non-fiction, short stories, novels, essays, and history, and collection of all the old compositions by such Shah Sachal Sami took place in this beginning of the first 40 years of 20th century. Among the poets, Kishan Bewas in 1920s broke the tradition of romanticism of a Persian type which was creeping into Sindhi. And also he made a big break from only, he composed on Sufism too, but largely was his going back to the nature, praising the nature and also social realism. So, and his poem about nature became the accepted prayer in all the Sindhi schools before partition. Now, of course, they don't. I'll recite that is about nature. Sab kan तुझी सारा कुदरत वारा, सब कन तुझी सारा कुदरत वारा, निर्मल ज्योति नूर नजारा, निर्मल ज्योति नूर नजारा, कोटा कोट बनाए धरत्यूं, कोटा कोट बनाए धरत्यूं, सहसे सिज टंड तारा कतियूं, जिंजो अंत न पारा कुदरत वारा, जिंजो अंत न पारा कुदरत वारा, निर्मल ज्योति नूर नजारा.
All praise thee, creature of nature, benevolent light, enchanting sights.
His poem on social realism was about pray that poor man's hutment should not crumble or be destroyed. So I'll recite that one of those stanzas. Ja ahe jaye dad navar se vabal khan, thindi nazar bar jagrivi aj khyal khan, ono न जंखे आहे को जोखे जंजाल खां, हल्की रहे जहामत सोगी संदूकड़ी, जंहिंमें गरूर ज़र न सरासर सगे गिड़ी, अल्लाह झुरे मशाल गरीबन जी झूपड़ी.
Property not subject to mortgage or burglary, pray, let not this hut crumble.
No, it is just a gist of it. But it is the translation is the property which is not subject to any inheritance or mortgage, and also there's no security to be taken care of, and there is no egoistic about its value or its economic, financial. It is just a simple hutment. So
what appears as though that you are rendering
yeah.
much larger
Yes.
than the English translation.
Oh yes, the English translation is only just a gist. Gist. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, it is. Then Hundraj Dukhayal, one of his students, became the most patriotic, famous poets of Sindh before the independence and partition. And his poems were, as I said, patriotic, calling on to people to stand up and revolt. So two lines of his, Thayo Thayo Pahenjo Raj, Thayo Thayo Pahenjo Raj, Dryo Dryo Dharyo Raj, Dryo Dryo Dharyo Raj, Mulko Asanjo Malik Dharya Khape na Airo Jado Ravaj, Mulko Asanjo Malik Dharya Khape na Airo Jado Ravaj, Thayo Thayo Pahenjo Raj.
Come, install your free rule, break the foreign rule.
From 1937, when Sindh separated from the Bombay Presidency and became a separate province, nationalism became dominant in Sindhi Muslim psyche. And from 1947 until now, Sindhi literature in Sindh has come to be dominated by generally secular composers, writers, fiction, non-fiction, and amongst them Muhammad Ibrahim Joyo, who's in late 80s now, and he's been a pioneer in creating the Sindh Literary Board, and Sheikh Ayaz was a poet who spent about 15 years in Pakistani prisons and wrote his famous jail diaries, novels, and short stories, but he's best known as a poet, the poet of resurrecting Sindhu Desh, and which has become amongst the leftist only in Sindh. Then they are very popular. I shall recite 2 lines of that. Sindhu Desh ji dharti tote panjo sis nimaya miti mathe laya. Sindhu Desh ji dharti tote panjo sis nimaya miti mathe laya. Kinjar khan karon jhartai, kinjar khan karon jhartai, tokhe chashman laya, mitti mathe laya. Duthub panjo, dehub panjo, duthub panjo, dehub panjo, maru shal milaya, mitti mathe laya. Sorry, it's a veneration for Sindhu Desh, that dust of your soil I'll put on my head as my decoration. From Kinjar, which is the lake, and to the Karanjar, which are the mountains and 2 ends of Sindh, I put you on my chashma eyes. The product is ours and the country is ours. So hopefully all the people who are separated will get together one day. Hundreds of writers of fiction, non-fiction have been produced on both sides of the border. They have been novelists, short stories writers, dramatists, non-fiction writers, poets, and both countries have now established institutes of Sindhology to preserve archives and conduct research and recovery of old manuscript and art objects. Several academies also exist to encourage and finance writers. Regrettably, in India, even though large number of writers are there, the readership in Sindhi has declined tremendously. And so it has among the Sindhis who live overseas. Sindhi as a spoken and learning language has very limited clientage in India now and the rest of the world who are outside Sindh. And incidentally, I should mention there's an Institute of Sindhology in Chicago, which concentrates on the study of Sindhu region. And that is run by Mr. D.L. Gidwani, who's the brother of Bhagwan Gidwani, who wrote the book Return of the Aryas, in which he claims the Aryas went from India to all over the world and returned as Aryas in Persia and India. Anyway, so that is now we have time, so we shall recite the Sindhi alphabet.
All right. I'll start now.
Sindhi has 52 letters. 52 letters in the alphabet, out of which 40 are of